He dragged her into a warehouse full of killers and declared her completely untouchable. Imagine walking into a room of 20 hardcore mobsters holding the hand of their ruthless leader. Dante Varley didn't hide his new obsession. He looked his deadliest enforcers in the eye and swore that anyone who even looked at Alara wrong would answer with their lives. She became the Mafia's most protected asset overnight. Could you survive the pressure of being a crime boss's ultimate weakness?
You and I are stepping right into this absolute madness together to watch a wild tragedy unfold. Look at Ara. She is a waitress who spent 2 years mastering the art of being a total ghost to survive this mob underworld. But tonight, that entire survival plan crashes and burns. A crystal glass shatters right on the table of Dante Varley, a literal mafia boss who can end your existence with one blink. The room completely freezes, expecting a brutal bloodbath. But here is the massive plot twist. Dante just silently stares at her. It brings us to a serious reality check about power. A loud temper tantrum is easy to handle, but the silent, dead-eyed stare of an absolute predator will completely shatter your spirit way before they ever lay a hand on you. Ara knows the ultimate underworld rule. If you see too much, you end up totally gone. The vibe in this restaurant on Tuesday was insanely toxic. Marcus, the sweaty floor manager, literally drags her into the dark hallway. The guy is losing his mind, shaking like a leaf while explaining the VIP server bailed. Ara has to go in. He grabs her shoulders, absolutely pleading with her to play it safe. Keep your eyes glued to the floor, zip your lips, wipe your memory. A freezing wave of pure panic hits her system. But honestly, here is a heavy truth we all have to deal with eventually. Sometimes the absolute worst, most terrifying burdens get dropped right on our shoulders at the exact moment we are desperately trying to run the other way. Every instinct in her body is screaming to just bolt. But the massive weight of her past due bills basically glues her shoes to the floor. Ara swallows her sheer terror and grabs the drink tray. Peeking through the frosted kitchen glass, she scopes out the targets. 6 enforcers with ice-cold eyes, one lady rocking a killer red dress, and right there in the dead center sits the big boss, Dante Varley. The guy oozes pure mafia energy. His crew sits barely an inch away, totally trapped in his terrifying orbit. He does not even have to raise his voice or act tough. The room just bends to his will. It is a crazy reminder of a dark psychological fact. True, unhinged power never actually has to yell to make you sweat. It just sits there quietly and waits for everybody else to completely fold. Right next to her, this older line cook actually crosses himself just hearing Dante's name. Like the literal devil just ordered a steak. Ara completely locks her jaw, shoves open the doors, and walks straight into the boss fight. She keeps her eyes glued to the crystal, moving like a glitchy robot. For a whole hour, she pulls off the perfect invisible ghost routine. These guys are casually plotting massive crimes and treating her like wallpaper. She zones out to survive, and it works flawlessly until her fried brain makes one tiny slip. She accidentally looks up, and Dante is already locked onto her. It hits us with a brutal life lesson. You can spend years crafting massive walls to protect yourself, only to accidentally burn them all down with one single careless look. Stick with me here, because you and I both know this is where the suspense goes totally off the charts. Dante's face is unreadable. Ara has zero clue if he thinks this is funny or if he is mentally planning her funeral. Those 3 seconds of locked eyes feel like a literal century. She dips back to the kitchen, hyperventilating. Marcus is freaking out, but she shoves past him to grab the backup wine. She marched back into that toxic room. The girl in red blows a massive cloud of smoke right in her face. As Ara reaches for a glass, One of the goons blindsides her, slamming his arm back into her wrist. Everything goes into slow motion as the bottle slips. Here is the tragic reality check. Pure panic will always make your hands fail at the exact moment you need them to be rock solid. The heavy bottle absolutely detonates, blasting red wine all over the pristine tablecloth like a literal crime scene. The room goes dead silent. Ara forgets how to breathe, frozen over the shattered glass. She barely stutters out an apology before Dante derails the situation. He actually tells her it is totally fine. His voice is chillingly flat and way too calm. He just dabs at the stain, watching her totally panic. When she tries to beg, he shuts her down with one terrifying glare. Then comes the ultimate mob flex. He orders his own top guy, Carlo, to apologize to the low-level waitress. Carlo turns completely pale. There is a deeply twisted truth here. The absolute worst villains do not just punish your mistakes. They weaponize them to mentally trap everyone else in the room. Dante casually tells her to grab another bottle, like nothing happened. Ara cannot even feel her own legs. Her hands are shaking so bad, she almost slices herself open on the shards. Marcus scrambles in to clean up the disaster while the mob bosses go right back to plotting their street wars. When Ara brings the fresh bottle, she holds it like a life raft. She feels their intense gazes totally destroying her sanity, but she shoves the panic down and finishes pouring the drinks. When she asks to step out, Dante hits her with a polite little smile that feels exactly like a loaded gun. She crashes onto the kitchen floor, totally breathless. It is a wild human reality. A polite smile from an absolute monster will damage your psyche way faster than a screaming threat from a normal enemy. A coworker hands her water, whispering she just won the survival lottery. But a dangerous idea is already brewing in her brain. Why would an unhinged mafia boss show a nobody any mercy? This is exactly how the toxic trap starts. We try to find warmth in the freezing hands of the predators destroying us. Marcus catches her out back, terrified. He drops the ultimate warning. Guys like Dante never forget a face that catches their eye. The absolute horror clicks. She is officially on the radar of an apex predator. She swears to stay safe and walks out into the freezing night. Her car is parked 3 sketchy blocks away. It proves a painful life lesson. We often escape one total nightmare, only to casually stroll blindly into a completely different trap. She parked in the pitch-black alley because she is completely broke. Suddenly, she hears the slow, terrifying crunch of footsteps behind her. Anyone targeted knows the golden rule of survival. If you sprint, the monster will hunt you down. Ara forces her legs to keep a steady pace while her heart is basically exploding. A voice cuts through the dark. She whips around. It is one of Dante's hitmen, standing there totally relaxed. He casually says the boss just wanted to ensure she made it to her ride alive. The psychological mind games here are next level. He uses the terror of the street to play the good guy, which brings us to a crucial life lesson. The absolute deadliest traps you will ever face in life are always perfectly disguised as a heroic rescue mission. You and I really need to unpack this moment together because the true trauma always hits after the chaos ends. They walk the rest of the trip in dead silence. Ara is dying to demand what his endgame is, but survival instinct zips her lips. She shoves her key into her busted car door. The enforcer leans on the hood, casually watching her fall apart. He gently whispers that she is safe, but adds an unhinged warning. Next time, do not squeeze the wine bottle so hard. Ara just nods like a terrified hostage. She locks herself in and watches him vanish into the dark. It reveals a super twisted irony. Our brain tells us to hide in the dark corners to stay safe, but those shadows are exactly where the absolute worst villains are already waiting for us. Once she barricades herself inside her apartment, her legs completely give out. Every instinct is screaming at her to pack a bag, ditch the city, and go totally off the grid. But the crushing weight of her bank loans keeps her trapped. The universe does not care if you are fighting for your life. The rent is still due. She gaslights herself into thinking she just needs to be a better background character. She picks up double shifts, hoping pure exhaustion will delete her anxiety. But boom. By Thursday, the absolute final boss walks right back into the restaurant lobby. It is a completely brutal life lesson. You can pack your bags and sprint across the globe, but you can never actually hide from an enemy who has already successfully downloaded your entire psychological profile. Dante strolls into the packed restaurant completely solo. Rocking a designer suit and a dangerous smirk, Ara is instantly paralyzed. The hostess walks the literal mafia don right to her tables. This is definitely not a coincidence. Alpha predators love isolating targets from the herd. Her brain screams to sprint for the exit, but her shoes are cemented to the tile. He gives an amused look and asks if she is just going to stand there. Her robotic customer service voice kicks in, asking for his order. He wants a scotch and tells her to surprise him. She totally scrambles to find the precious bottle. It highlights a tragic flaw we all share. When backed into a corner by a terrifying threat, our panicked brains desperately try to prove how incredibly useful we are just to earn the basic right to survive. Check out Ara right here. Her hands are shaking so bad, she is holding her drink like a shield. She walks back to the booth, and there is Varley, the absolute boss, chilling in the glow of his phone. She sets the glass down, practically hyperventilating. Varley compliments the drink, his voice dripping with this suffocating patience. Then, boom, the pivot. He softly commands her to sit down. Every instinct screams at Ara to bolt, but she drops onto the seat like a trapped bird. He tells her to relax while she stammers that she is on the clock. He just calmly replies that he is asking her to sit, totally twisting her reality. Listen, life throws us a huge lesson right here. True manipulation does not look like a monster in the dark. It wears a quiet, polite mask. You and I are going to unpack this absolute mind game together. Varley actually apologizes, and it hits Ara like a punch. You can see the raw shock of this predator showing actual mercy. She is searching his eyes, spotting his faint scars, and he plays the weary human card perfectly. He brushes off the shattered bottle, casually blaming his associate. Then he praises Ara for handling it well, straight up rewarding her for hiding her fear. When she admits she is scared, he just nods. He tells her she does not need to be afraid unless she gives him a reason. What a terrifying trap. The hard life lesson here is brutal but real. Sometimes the person who completely shatters your world does it just so they can become the only solid ground you have left to stand on. The second he drops her name, Ara is completely paralyzed. The loud restaurant fades to dead silence. Varley leans in, telling her to book the private room tomorrow for some massive, lucrative party. When she questions him, he flashes this wild, disarming smile. He tells her she needs the cash, totally spinning ads mob control as some kind of charity. Ara wants to reject him, but her empty bank account forces her to bow her head. For the rest of the night, Varley acts like a total ghost. He eats quietly, drops a normal tip, and vanishes. That normal act is his deadliest weapon. By acting like a regular dude, he deletes her fear and replaces it with toxic gratitude. Here is a major life lesson. Gifts from powerful people who want to control you are never actually free. They are just early down payments to buy your absolute loyalty. You and I already know the deal. Just because the threat is gone does not mean you are safe. For Ara, the next few weeks feel like standing right in the eye of a massive hurricane. She works the big event and makes triple her usual cash. But get this, she walks to her car alone at midnight, expecting him to show up, and Vali just vanishes. 2 whole weeks of dead silence. This is a brutal, high-level mafia mind game. He is starving her out emotionally, so she starts craving his presence. Ara just buries herself in a numb routine, banking the cash and trying to forget those dark eyes. But the trap is already set. A hard truth about the human heart is that quiet peace can sometimes feel like an empty void. By ghosting her, he ensures her totally safe life feels super hollow compared to the intense focus he once gave her. Guys, Ara having zero social life is the perfect setup for a boss like him. Flash forward to April, and Vali is back. Same dark corner booth, same terrifying energy. He uses her name, tells her to sit, and her exhausted body just instantly obeys. He asks about her life with this crazy calculated intimacy, then casually drops that he knows about her private shifts. She freezes and asks how he knows. He just deadpan says he owns 20% of the restaurant. Absolute mind-blowing flex. Her one safe space was actually his hunting ground. He leans in, asking why she needs all that cash. She tries to deflect, warning that curiosity is dangerous. He hits her with a chilling smile and says, "Only if you are not careful." We all need to remember this life lesson. A master manipulator never asks a question without already holding the exact answer. The dining room is buzzing, but Ara is locked inside this freezing psychological cage. She actually confesses that she is paying off heavy student loans. It is wild how fast we spill secrets to someone who acts like they know everything. Vali digs deeper and uncovers her buried passion for art history. He looks right at her and says, "But you wanted to do it." He tracks every ounce of regret on her face. This is not small talk, guys. He is mapping out all her broken dreams. When she admits she gave up, he drops this soft, chilling promise, saying it might matter. A customer waves, breaking the spell, and Ara practically bolts away. Her heart is hammering. Here is a tragic life lesson we all share. Dark, powerful figures will always sniff out your starved dreams and quietly make themselves the only key to achieving them. Picture the scene with me, guys. The diner is suffocatingly quiet, just the neon sign buzzing outside. When Ara heads back to her station, the mob boss is totally gone. But left right there on the table, 5 crisp $100 bills. Her breath literally catches. You can see her fingers trembling as she stares at the cash. Her coworker, Marcus, leans in and tells her she is crazy if she does not keep it for rent. She slides that cash into her apron and, boom, she just swallowed the bait. Vali starts coming back every single week, claiming that exact same booth. He speaks softly about art, patiently figuring out exactly how her mind works. The life lesson here is deeply tragic. Sometimes, our sheer desperation to just survive makes us totally blind to the deadly, invisible traps we are willingly walking right into. We jump to a bright May afternoon in a packed cafe, and guys, look at this insane change in Ara. She does not feel creeped out by Vali anymore. Instead, she actually feels seen. Her friend Jenna is leaning across the table, desperately trying to wake her up. Jenna knows the dark rumors. She warns Ara that this dude has a totally brutal mafia history painted in blood. But Ara just tightens her jaw and actually defends him. She clings to this wild illusion that he is just a lonely guy asking about her art dreams. But under the table, Her hands are cramping from gripping her own knees. Deep down, she is terrified because Dante Varelli is a literal predator bleeding into her quiet life. Here is a bitter life lesson for you. We will fiercely defend the exact same illusions that are ultimately destined to destroy us. The camera zooms right in as Ara completely shatters the physical boundary. Listen to the harsh scrape of the chair as she literally sits down at his table without being invited. She stares him down, demanding to know why he haunts her section every Tuesday night. Dante does not even flinch. Instead, he lets out this low, disarming laugh that fills the room. It is a masterful performance of warmth. He tells her she is the only soul alive who looks at him without calculating his threat level. By claiming she is no longer afraid, she basically seals her own fate. Her raw terror has mutated into a fatal curiosity. It is a super haunting life lesson for all of us. The absolute most dangerous illusion you can ever hold is the belief that you are the sole exception to a monster's rule. Stick with me here, guys, because this is the exact moment the trap snaps shut. Ara asks him, barely whispering, if she should be afraid. Dante nods slowly. Then he hits her with the most dangerous weapon of all, a partial truth. He confesses that honesty is a luxury he can rarely afford, totally projecting this tragic, lonely king vibe. He spins his brutal life as Dante Varelli into this huge, unfair tragedy, dodging the fact that he chose this violent path. When she asks what he truly wants, a heavy silence drops between them like a massive, unspoken mob pact. A devastating threshold has just been crossed. This teaches us something totally vital about human nature. Pity is the lock, and shared loneliness is the key that opens the door to our own ruin. She is going to regret this night for the rest of her life. We roll straight into a boiling hot summer, and this insane psychological conditioning is taking over. Dante vanishes for days, only to pop up like a ghost. It is a calculated starvation tactic to make her crave his attention. When he finally sits in her section, the tips are routine, totally ripping down her final defenses. They trade quiet secrets in the dark. He talks about his sister in Boston, playing the role of a normal guy mask his savage nature. Ara unconsciously memorizes his vibes, pouring scotch when he is stressed, wine when he is chill. But the real horror? Huge dark sedans are idling in the heat right under her apartment window. The life lesson here is absolutely chilling, guys. We adjust to the creeping darkness so slowly that we completely forget what the light ever looked like. The tension snaps in late June, and you and I are going to watch this climax closely. Ara confronts him about those shadowy men watching her apartment. Dante does not even flinch. He just calmly admits that she has become way too important to leave unguarded. The camera frames her shaking hands pressed flat against the cold table. Her nervous system is in complete meltdown. She begs to be let go, crying that she does not understand the brutal rules of his mob underworld. But Dante slowly leans in, closing that physical gap until the tension is off the charts. He demands she actually speak the name of the forbidden bond, tying them together. The tragedy is locked in now. Here is the final lesson. True captivity officially begins the exact second we agree to put a name to the invisible chains holding us down. All right, guys, stick with me because we are diving straight into absolute mafia chaos. It is pitch black in the restaurant back office, and our girl Ilara hears the muffled sound of a brutal beatdown through the drywall. She peeks through a cracked door and sees Tommy cornered by two absolute goons holding heavy steel pipes. His eyes are screaming for help. Now the smart move is to freeze. But here is a quick life lesson for you. We humans are dangerously wired to run into burning buildings to save others, forgetting we might catch fire ourselves. In a total panic, Elara makes a wild dash for the security alarm. But of course, she steps on the squeakiest floorboard in the building. The goons snap their heads around. Dead eye contact. The predator just locked onto his prey, and things are about to get absolutely insane. The security alarm goes off, absolutely shredding the silence. A massive hand shoves Elara against the wall, and the room turns into a blur of pure chaos. We are talking sickening cracks of bone, and the heavy smell of blood everywhere. Just as the goons get dragged away, she stumbles backward and bumps right into a solid chest. Enter Dante. The mob boss himself steps into the light, playing the hero role perfectly. He grabs her shaking shoulders, making her look right into his ice-cold eyes. Now pay attention, because here is a brutal life lesson. When you are panicking, your desperate heart will easily mistake a well-built prison for a safe haven. She literally leans right into the exact monster who set this entire trap up in the first place, actually thinking the worst is over. The manipulation here is next level, guys. Outside, the police cruisers are flashing red lights, but inside, the room is dripping with absolute corruption. The cops are literally backing away while Dante totally controls the narrative. Elara is wrapped in a shock blanket, just watching him work. He is so smooth with it, using that chilling sociopathic charm on the lead detective. Listen closely to this life lesson. You cannot plant a seed in toxic soil, and you definitely cannot find real peace in the arms of a violent mobster. Yet her traumatized brain is clinging to him. Then Marcus slumps into a chair next to her, looking like he aged 10 years in 5 minutes. He drops a massive truth bomb. Those goons were not there for a random robbery. They were sending a blood-soaked message to intimidate the real undisputed king of this territory, Dante. Elara practically loses her mind when Marcus drops the ultimate plot twist. Dante owns literally everything. Every single shadow in this city belongs to his mafia syndicate. She is shaking like a leaf as she gets a ride home, staring blankly at the streetlights. Back in her tiny apartment, the silence is absolutely deafening. She flips on the television, but it does nothing. Here is a heavy life lesson. Real loneliness is not just being by yourself. It is that terrifying realization that you are completely unprotected in a ruthless world. Right then, her phone lights up. One text from Dante. He casually tells her to lock her doors because his men are parked outside. Boom. The invisible net just snapped shut. With one single message, he blocks out the entire outside world and makes himself her only chance at survival. Absolutely wild. You and I can see this toxic trap being set from a mile away. Dante sits on the phone, using his voice like a velvet hammer to guilt trip her and strip away her independence. When he hangs up, Elara sneaks over to the window. Sure enough, a blacked-out sedan is idling on the empty street. Is that a bodyguard or a prison warden? Remember this life lesson. Sometimes the exact hands shielding you from the storm are the ones building your cage. She stays awake all night, totally paralyzed by the trauma. By 9 in the morning, Dante calls again, acting intensely personal. Then he casually drops that he already cancelled her work shifts and is sending a getaway car. The mafia boss literally stole her entire freedom in one single move. She should be absolutely furious about this, but the anger just never shows up. The poison of that trauma bond is already kicking into high gear. Instead of flipping out over him hijacking her life, she just slumps over in total relief. She barely asks where they are going, trying to hold on to some tiny boundary because her own apartment feels like a horror movie. Here is a dark life lesson for you guys. It is crazy how fast the human mind will happily walk right into captivity if the outside world feels too dangerous. Right at noon, a scary enforcer named Vincent rolls up. 0 words are spoken. She hops into the tinted security vehicle and watches her normal life disappear behind the glass. They pull up to this massive steel skyscraper, basically a villain fortress of extreme wealth. Vincent swipes his keycard, and that silent elevator ride pulls her straight up into the mafia boss's ultimate domain. This penthouse is not a home at all. It is a freezing, sterile monument to a massive ego, designed to make any normal person feel entirely powerless. The giant windows give this crazy god-like view of the city. Dante is just standing there, looking like an absolute villain against the glass. He turns around and smoothly lies to her face, claiming she is totally free to leave. He offers her a heavy drink, but she actually shoots it down. Time for a major life lesson. Never accept the sweet poison that is only meant to blind you to the trap. Dante then casually explains the restaurant beat down. He names a rival mafia family, completely brushing off the brutal violence as just minor business friction. He takes a slow sip of his liquor, and his hand is rock solid. He literally feeds on human terror without a single drop of sweat. Dante locks onto her with those dead eyes and straight up calls her a liability. He knows her biggest fear is getting other people hurt, and he twists that knife perfectly. Listen, the absolute cruelest way to lock someone up is to convince them that they are the actual danger to society. That is a heavy life lesson right there. He laughs at the cops, making it clear normal laws do not apply in his tower. But when he casually orders her to stay locked up, something inside Elara finally snaps. Pure primal rage takes over. She steps right up to him, shaking but defiant, demanding the real truth. If she is stuck on his mafia chessboard, she is not playing blindfolded anymore. The penthouse goes dead silent. Dante narrows his eyes, silently calculating if he should manipulate this girl further or just totally break her spirit. Let us break down this crazy scene together, guys. Notice how this icy penthouse perfectly matches to Dante's twisted soul. Huge, freezing, thin, and empty. He starts talking about this massive upcoming gang war like it is just gravity, not some horrible crime. He says he needs an understanding with the rivals, which is literally just mafia slang for a mass elimination. His voice drops low, showing the absolute monster hiding in that designer suit. Then comes the biggest lie. He promises that if she just stays quiet, she can go back to her normal life once the bodies are buried. Here is a profound life lesson. A truly dark soul will burn your entire world to ashes and then casually hand you the broom. A dry laugh escapes Elara's throat. She looks out at those massive glass walls and finally realizes the terrifying truth. This golden cage is permanently sealed shut. Elara's voice is literally shaking as she demands the answer we are all waiting for. Why is the absolute king of the underworld so obsessed with a random waitress? In 3 quick steps, Dante closes the gap between them, showing off that terrifying predator energy. He leans in close and whispers that she actually makes him feel human. Guys, this is next level manipulation. He takes the empty void of his soul and begs her to fix it. Pay attention to this tragic life lesson. A gentle heart will completely bleed itself dry, trying to heal a fundamentally broken monster. Just like how hostages fall for their captors, Elara starts taking on his emotional baggage like it is her mission. By acting like a wounded victim, this mafia mastermind completely guarantees she will feel morally obligated to save him from his own darkness. The sheer weight of his mind games hits her like a freight train. She is gasping for air, staring right into his eyes, begging for just 2 days to process this insane mafia reality. But then, the ultimate plot twist drops. She suddenly realizes she does not even want her safe life back. The toxic poison has fully locked in, and that trauma bond is setting like solid concrete. Completely throwing survival out the window, she actually demands to know his darkest secrets. Dante steps into the light and admits to running illegal shipments for the massive kingpin Vittorio, perfectly mirroring his boss's pure arrogance. And guess what? She does not run. Here is the most painful life lesson of all. Sometimes we willingly hug the exact fire that is going to burn us alive. She is fully ready to be swallowed whole by the underworld. Step right into the frame with me, guys, because we are looking at an absolute psychological train wreck. The lights hit the sharp angles of Dante's face as he casually lists off his crimes. He smoothly claims he kept his secrets just to protect her, which is a top-tier manipulation tactic. When Alara finally asks the big question, if he has ever ended a life, his answer drops without a single second of hesitation. Yes. That ice-cold admission just hangs in the air. It is a massive red flag that should have her sprinting for the elevator. But watch what happens. Her shoulders actually relax. Her survival instincts are screaming, but her brain is already rewriting this brutal mobster into some misunderstood hero. Here is your final life lesson. The sweet lies we tell ourselves just to feel safe are always way more dangerous than the brutal truth we are trying to run from. Any normal person would absolutely lose their minds right now and sprint for the exit to get away from this confessed killer. But not our girl Ara. The camera zooms in on her looking completely lost, whispering like she is in a trance as she asks for a house tour of his shiny cage. Dante takes her through this crazy maze of giant bedrooms and spotless bathrooms. It is super rich, but totally dead inside. When she points out how creepy it is, the boss actually drops his guard. He admits the mansion is just a flex to scare his rivals. He traded his humanity just to look like an untouchable god. Honestly, it goes to show that building a giant wall to keep enemies out usually just leaves you locked inside, alone with your own demons. We literally see her trying so hard to match his vibe, comparing his mobster lies to the fake retail smile she has to slap on to survive her shifts. It is honestly a tragic stretch for connection. While Dante orders takeout, we watch Ara wandering around the giant guest room. Her tiny, cheap belongings look totally out of place next to all his expensive silk furniture. Back in the living room, she watches him pace around like a general planning a war. He casually drops the name Castellano, hyping up a massive showdown happening tomorrow at 2. He swears the crowded spot will keep things clean, but his eyes promise a literal bloodbath. Trying to vibe with a walking disaster does not calm it down. It just sucks you right into the wreckage. When she asks how he handles the pressure of his empire, his answer is just next-level sad boy energy. He paints himself as this tragic hero, the only guy strong enough to hold back the worst of the worst. In his twisted head, his violence is a beautiful sacrifice. 40 minutes later, a massive spread of Thai food shows up. They eat with the crazy beautiful Chicago skyline behind them. It feels way too normal, which is the biggest trap ever. Dante brings up art, and Ara totally lights up. She starts geeking out over old paintings and their deep meanings. With every shaky word, she is basically handing this predator the cheat codes to her brain. Sharing what you love can build real connections, but giving that info to a snake just gives them the exact blueprint to ruin your whole life. The lighting totally shifts here, making Dante look super innocent as he leans in. playing the perfect listener. He matches her energy exactly, sinking his hooks into her feelings. Then comes the massive gut punch. He talks about a piano he used to play, a passion that died 15 years ago when his dad was killed, forcing him to take over the mob. It is a crazy good performance of shared trauma. Ara completely drops her guard. She looks at this killer and just sees a misunderstood artist. As they wash dishes together, the running water covers up how insane this actually is. It is a cute domestic scene, balancing right on top of a literal landmine. Empathy is a beautiful thing, but never let your need to fix someone blind you to the giant red flags they are waving right in your face. Let us break down this scene together, guys. Ara wanders around this empty penthouse looking at expensive art. She stops at a tiny painting of a foggy forest. Right on cue, Dante slides out of the shadows to whisper that his dead mom painted it. And boom, the trap is set. He feeds her this perfect bite of childhood trauma, and she swallows it whole. She starts tearing up, spilling the story of how her own dad died when she was 12. The camera gets super close, showing the exact second this toxic bond is born. Dante looks like he cares, but do not get it twisted. He is not feeling her pain. He is just weaponizing it to lock her down. Being open with someone should be a beautiful thing, not a crowbar used to crack open a lonely heart and take total control of it. The physical toll this twisted romance takes on her is wild to watch. Her voice shakes as she talks about the day her dad flatlined, a nightmare that left her desperate for a protector. Now she is completely drained. Dante steps up looking like a tank, casually telling her to sleep while he handles the gang war. It is honestly so messed up. She actually wants to stay awake next to the exact villain who ruined her life, confusing his controlling grip for a warm hug. She crashes in the guest bed, and the deep sound of Dante talking through the wall knocks her out. It is a huge wake-up call. Running into the arms of a walking red flag for a little bit of comfort is just going to put you to sleep right before the absolute worst part of the nightmare kicks off. 13 hours of dead silence go by. When she wakes up, Dante is standing there, looking like the Grim Reaper. Oh, get this. He is holding a coffee made exactly how she likes it, down to the perfect drop of cream. That attention to detail is terrifying. Ara starts crying about feeling like a ghost, completely losing her mind. Dante taps his watch and says he has to bounce for the big showdown, leaving his massive bodyguard, Marco, to watch the door. The panic on her face is unreal. The crazy twist is she is no longer scared of being locked up. She is terrified that her kidnapper might get taken out and never come back. We get so used to the toxic situations we are stuck in that we start fearing the quiet emptiness of outliving the exact people who caused our pain. Dante uses the cozy smell of breakfast to distract her from the fact that she is a hostage. When he walks out wearing a sharp dark suit, he looks like a final boss heading to battle. He hugs her close and thanks her for trusting him. The sad reality is she had absolutely zero choice in this. He completely nuked her life until he was the only option left. By acting like she chose this, he is snapping the final padlock on her brain. As soon as that door shuts, Ara stands there frozen. She does not even try to look for an escape route. She is just panicking that the guy who ruined everything might actually get hurt. When you let someone completely cut you off from the outside world, you will eventually confuse your total reliance on them for actual, genuine love. The clock ticking in the background is so loud it drives you crazy. Ara paces around this penthouse like a trapped bird. Right at 2, the muscle, Marco, steps into the shot. He sits down with a book, pretending to be a chill babysitter, But the dude is a brick wall blocking the door. The tension is choking her. Ara tries to draw, but her hands are shaking out of control from the pure anxiety eating her alive. Then, exactly at 5, the phone goes off and scares us all. Dante barks through the speaker, telling her to pack her bags right now. He is keeping her adrenaline so spiked, she cannot even form a clear thought. If you keep someone running on a treadmill of non-stop panic, they will never stop to realize you are the exact person holding the dog leash. This is the exact moment her past gets completely deleted, and it is brutal. Over the phone, Dante drops the bomb that the rival gang found her apartment. Real or fake, it does not matter because the damage is done. Her safe zone is cancelled. Dante Smooth talks his way into basically buying her, saying she can live in his underworld and he will cover her lost paychecks. It is a savage power move, putting a shiny designer collar around her neck. Ara completely breaks down crying. She does not want his dirty money. She just wants her boring, quiet life back. But that life is up in smoke, so she has to hold hands with the guy holding the gas can. We take our boring daily routines for granted until everything crashes down, leaving us begging to have just one normal Tuesday back. Stick with me for this last crazy scene, guys. Ara is practically begging for just 1 second to breathe. Dante gives her exactly 1 hour, but here is the sick joke. She literally has nowhere else to go. Right on cue, Marco steps up and hands her a cold drink to take the edge off. The alcohol just numbs her brain, pulling her deeper into this fancy nightmare. Watch her face as she starts asking the hitman about his 10 years working for the boss. She is staring into Marco's eyes, praying for a tiny hint that her kidnapper is actually a good guy. It is the craziest survival instinct, convincing yourself the devil is a saint just so you can sleep. When we are drowning in panic, we will gaslight ourselves into believing the heavy weight pulling us down is actually a rescue boat. Look at this absolute madness, guys. Marco is feeding Ara the exact toxic validation she is completely desperate for. He is out here swearing up and down that Dante, a literal mafia boss made of pure ruthlessness, magically turns into a softie just for her. It is the classic, I can fix him trap, and she is falling for it hard. Drunk on this fake sense of control, Ara actually tries to negotiate her own surrender. She asks for tiny crumbs of freedom, like stepping outside and demanding the truth about the mob violence at their door. She thinks she is making a boss move, but it is just a tragic plea for respect. The lesson here hits so incredibly hard. Sometimes, when we think we are setting firm boundaries, we are really just measuring the exact size of our very own cage. You and I need to stop and look at how perfectly this trap snaps shut. Dante lets a heavy silence hang in the room, acting like he is hesitant to agree to her terms. Then he flashes this completely disarming smile to lock down her trust and drops the most dangerous word ever: home. They roll through the city straight to his fortress. It looks like a cozy brownstone, but do not be fooled, it is a maximum security vault. The massive iron gates slam shut behind them, disappearing into a garage without a single witness. Ara walks straight into total isolation, and the wildest part is she chose it. It is a harsh truth we all have to learn eventually. Safety handed to you by a violent predator is never an actual sanctuary. It is just a cage with softer pillows. This scene is a massive plot twist. You expect the ruthless boss to have some cold villain lair, right? Nope. His secret apartment is warm and a complete mess. Tossed jackets, random books, and crusty coffee mugs everywhere. It makes zero sense for a guy so obsessed with control. Dante brings Ara inside, looking insanely awkward for a man who normally orders hits before breakfast. Ara spots old family photos on the wall. Faded pictures of his mom and little sister sit there like ghosts from a past life. Dante freezes in the doorway, totally exposed for a second. The lesson here is impossible to miss. No matter how far into the dark a person goes, they always leave tiny pieces of their lost humanity hiding in plain sight. Watch how the big bad boss loses his swagger. Dante nervously offers her food, and his intimidating mobster vibe crumbles. Ara politely declines his attempts to play host, and he confesses that he never shares his space. For 5 years, this dude has lived in total exile, locking out his loyal hitmen because he is terrified of getting backstabbed. Pure paranoia. But then Ara jokes about not judging his messy book collection, and you can see a spark of relief in his terrifying eyes. She unpacks her little bag, just a sketchbook and 2 shirts. It leaves us with a massive life lesson. Total isolation will drive you completely insane, but just one tiny moment of real human connection can instantly tear down years of paranoid defense. Her tiny pile of stuff looks incredibly sad, dumped on his expensive furniture. It is the literal proof of a life destroyed by trauma. Ara walks into the kitchen and catches the Don without his custom suits. Just rocking regular denim, the vibe completely shifts. They sit down with some red wine, and the silence between them is thick. Then Ara brings up his rival, Castellanos. Instantly, Dante goes ice cold. He casually admits he stalked the rival's daughter at school just to force a truce. Ara is visibly disgusted by the sheer ruthlessness. Even though Dante swears he was never actually going to hurt the kid, his mind games are absolutely next level. It brings up a really grim life lesson. People with absolute power are almost always the first ones to use the innocence of others as leverage. Stick with me here, because we need to unpack Ara's reaction. Dante tells her that his enemies see her as a massive weak spot now. His fix? Classic mob boss ego. He promises absolute violence against anyone who even looks at her, talking about murder like he is ordering a pizza. A normal person would run for the door, but Ara, she actually feels this twisted wave of relief. Guys, we are watching Stockholm Syndrome spawn right in front of us. Her traumatized brain is flipping pure terror into gratitude, finding comfort in the biggest monster just because he fights off the other monsters. It is a heartbreaking truth about human nature. Sometimes we are so desperate for a safe place to hide, we gladly walk right back into the exact fire that burned us in the first place. Dante drops a bomb, confessing that without his violent reputation, he is literally nothing. His entire ego is glued together by sheer dominance. Ara wants to tell him there is another way, but she is too broken to speak up. Instead, she asks for one real secret that has nothing to do with the Mafia. Dante hands over the most calculated piece of vulnerability ever. He admits he is completely terrified of dogs because of a German Shepherd incident when he was a kid. Yes, the most lethal mob boss in the city is afraid of puppies. Ara just loses it and starts cracking up at how absurd that is. It is an absolute masterclass in mobster manipulation. The lesson here is genuinely scary. The most dangerous predators know exactly which cute, harmless weaknesses to show off just to make you feel completely safe. The spotlight flips to Ara, spilling her crushed dream about wanting to run an art museum. For a second, you hear real passion in her voice, but then she instantly tears herself down, blaming her dad's debts and acting like she was never good enough. It is a classic survivor move, making yourself small so you do not get hurt. But Dante is not having any of it. He rejects her broken story and praises her raw talent, pointing out how her face lights up when talking about art. He completely shatters her belief that she is a failure. Panicking because she feels way too seen by this mob boss, Ara awkwardly changes the subject to his sister. The life lesson here is huge. Validating someone's hidden potential is the absolute fastest way to hack straight past their thickest emotional walls. Dante brings up his sister, and his vibe gets incredibly heavy. He admits she offered him a clean way out after their old man died, but he sprinted straight into the underworld instead. He roasts his younger self, calling out the insane arrogance of thinking he could run a bloody mafia empire and still keep a clean conscience. He drops a hard fact about his world. You cannot dip your toes in the dark. It either eats you alive or you die. The silence after that is absolutely suffocating. To kill the awkward tension, Dante pivots back to cooking dinner, pulling Ara into the kitchen like they are some normal couple. This highlights a genuinely deadly life lesson. The most inescapable traps we stumble into are the ones we arrogantly think we can just walk away from whenever we want. This is where the dynamic completely shatters. Dante brutally shuts down Ara's attempt to turn him into a misunderstood bad boy. He lays his resume out plain and simple. He catches bodies. He runs a massive crime syndicate. He is literally the monster his own mother warned everyone about. But Ara is so buried in Stockholm Syndrome that she ignores the giant red flags, hyping up his protective side to justify catching feelings. The denial is absolute insanity. Dante cannot even process her blind loyalty, so he storms across the room and kisses her like a madman. It is a wild mix of heavy guilt and total toxic possession. The life lesson here: we constantly project fake goodness onto deeply broken people simply because looking at their actual darkness is way too terrifying for our minds to handle. You and I have to pause and look at this piece by piece. We are watching the ultimate toxic push and pull in real time. Dante drops a weak apology for kissing her, just a calculated flex of fake vulnerability. And how does Ara react? She steps up and pulls him straight back into a hug. Guys, we are witnessing the exact second a trauma bond gets locked in permanently. She whispers that she does not care about the life-threatening danger of his mafia lifestyle anymore. The life lesson here is incredibly bitter. When someone is completely starved for a tiny bit of human attention, they will happily walk right into the line of fire just to feel seen for once. Her broken self-esteem makes her the absolute perfect target for his unhinged mobster ego. Watch her bring reality right in front of us. Ara grabs his face with shaking hands, verbally deleting his identity as a ruthless mafia enforcer. She tells him she only sees the man, ignoring the blood-soaked monster in her kitchen. This is her trapped mind going into overdrive, aggressively romanticizing her captor to cope. Dante kisses again. It feels like half a romantic promise and half a terrifying mob threat, locking down his dominance. Then they just go back to cooking dinner like nothing happened. The cozy vibe is wild compared to her mental prison. The lesson here is terrifying. We will normalize absolute insanity just to survive the day. Every tiny touch at that dinner table is just another invisible chain locking her to a certified sociopath. All right, guys, let us set the scene. Outside those massive oak doors, Dante is barking orders, running his absolute bloodbath of a mafia empire. But inside, we have Ara, curled up on the sofa like a deer caught in headlights, soaking up the pure terror vibes. The doors click open, dead silence. Dante leans on the frame, rubbing his temples, pulling off a masterclass in looking completely drained. Bro literally whispers he just wants to survive the night. The lighting suddenly makes him look like a tragic hero instead of a ruthless mob boss. Stick with me, because you and I are going to unpack the this crazy performance together. The lesson here is simple but brutal. The absolute worst predators out there never walk in, acting like the bad guy. They always play the tired, misunderstood victim. So Ara is running on zero sleep, and her sanity is practically in the garbage. Dante scoops her up like it is nothing and carries her to this massive bed. Guys, this is 100% calculated dominance disguised as a sweet, romantic rescue. She is totally falling for it, gripping his jacket and begging him not to leave to leave her alone. He drops this fake warning about being toxic, knowing exactly how reverse psychology works. She instantly bites, whispering he just needs someone to believe in him. It is an absolute disaster waiting to happen. You hate to see someone fall for the trap. The simple lesson in life is this: trying to fix a completely shattered person will usually just leave you bleeding from their broken edges. He kisses her forehead, sealing her fate, and watches her pass out. It is morning now, and the sun is barely peeking through these massive windows. Ara is stuck in this giant mansion by herself, except for Marco, standing outside like an absolute tank. She is wandering around her fancy cage until she spots this huge piano covered in dust. She nervously presses one single key, and the sound echoes everywhere. Boom! The temperature drops. Dante appears in the doorway looking stiff as a board, completely terrifying her. All over again, she starts apologizing just for breathing the same air. He coldly snaps back that he does not play music anymore. Look, we can take a real-life lesson from this guy's miserable vibe. When you choose a path of pure violence, you end up burying every soft, beautiful thing inside yourself, walking around as a totally empty shell forever. But get this, guys, she does not even flinch at his terrifying glare. Instead, she pushes this hardened mafia boss to sit down and play. Dante totally leans into it. For a guy who ends lives for a living, he plays the vulnerable card flawlessly. His scarred hands hit the keys, dropping a super emotional, messy Chopin piece. It makes him look incredibly deep and romantic instead of completely unhinged. She falls for the trap and tells him the music is beautiful. He gives this tiny smirk, muttering that even monsters have hobbies. Bam! Her defenses are entirely wiped out. This brings us to a super important lesson. A nice melody does not erase a horrible past. Charm and talent are often just the fancy velvet gloves that dangerous people wear to grab a firm hold of your life. Ara is literally building her own trap right now. She starts telling him that even dark souls deserve some light, basically crowning herself as his personal savior. Dante locks it in with a slow kiss, straight up telling her he is going to completely destroy her, but she is so deep in the delusion she thinks it is romantic. Let us break this down together. They spend the whole afternoon playing house like a normal couple. But when it gets dark, the mob boss flips the switch. He casually drops the bomb that the entire crime syndicate will know she belongs to him tonight. Guys, he is literally branding her. The brutal life lesson here is one you cannot ignore. When a very dangerous person builds a massive wall to protect you, they are actually just building your permanent prison. The realization finally hits her face, and it is insane to watch. He looks at her with freezing eyes and tells her the entire underworld now sees her as his literal property. Most people would run screaming, but Ara? She gets this crazy, starry-eyed look. She actually feels special. Dante whispers that keeping her around makes him look human to the other mobsters, acting like a scared kid who needs her. She is officially done for, guys. She went from having a bright future to being an anchor for a total psycho. We have to take a step back and learn from this absolute train wreck. The harsh reality of trying to save a drowning person is that you almost never pull them to safety. Usually, you just become the heavy rock they drag down to the bottom of the ocean right alongside them. Look at this absolute chaos, guys. The story hits its darkest act because Dante is literally weaponizing his own backstory. Ara begs for the raw truth, totally convinced she can handle his inner demons. The shadows cut across his face as he drops the nightmare of Maria, his ex dragged from her house and locked in a pitch-black box for 3 agonizing days. He paints this insanely gruesome picture, flipping the script so he looks less like a ruthless mob boss and more like a misunderstood victim. Ara ends up feeling like she is the ultimate exception, diving right into his suffocating shadow. Honestly, the life lesson here is pretty brutal. A broken person will happily dig up the bones of their past victims just to build a secure cage around the one they want to trap right now. Dante pulls away, his jaw ticking as his voice drops to a completely dead hum. He explains how Maria survived the torture, but the sheer horror snapped her mind, making her vanish into thin air. Guys, this is a massive red flag painted in actual blood. Stick with me, because things get so twisted here. Ara asks if he found the guys who did it, and his eyes go empty. He casually mentions erasing them from the earth, the men, their families, their houses reduced to grey ash, total ruin. Any normal person would have bolted for the exit, but she glues her feet to the floor. It is a crazy flaw in human nature, honestly. We can stare into a blazing fire of pure, unhinged violence and somehow convince ourselves it is just the comforting warmth of true love. This is the exact second the steel trap snaps shut over her soul. Anyone in their right mind would have smashed a window to escape. But watch how she steps closer, burying her face into his chest, totally erasing the line between her normal life and his mafia war zone. She honestly thinks standing next to the devil is safer than hiding behind his bodyguards. When his arms finally crush around her, his massive frame shaking, she misreads his adrenaline-soaked tremors as a desperate cry for love. She promises they will burn in this fire together, handing over her identity on a silver platter. She locked her own cage from the inside. It is a tough lesson, but you truly lose yourself the moment you tie your own survival to the very storm that is meant to tear you apart. Notice how that one suffocating word just hangs in the air. He calls her his girl. It is basically a mafia brand burned onto her skin. But instead of pure panic, it sends a warm thrill of submission down her spine. She whispers a promise to stay, sealing her fate in blood. Later, hiding in the dark guest room while he runs his criminal empire through the walls, she stares at the ceiling. She thinks about the absolute insanity of it all, sleeping under the roof of a killer waiting for a massive gang war to kick off at dawn. But the toxic attachment is already planted deep inside her. The scariest trick our brains can pull is taking a pitch-black descent into a living nightmare and wrapping it up in the deceitful, cozy feeling of finally coming home. You and I have to pause and really look at her in the dark. Listening to the violent rumble of his voice through the drywall, she feels this sick, twisted sense of peace. But when dawn breaks, the brutal reality hits her like a freight train. She is basically a hostage getting dressed for a mafia war. She throws on dark, shapeless clothes, trying to shrink away from the violence. She walks into the kitchen, and Dante is waiting. He is wearing a sharp, custom suit, looking like a flawless mob king. He sees her shaking hands, and his voice drops to a low rumble of pure arrogance, promising that everyone will bow to her simply because he demands it. The saddest truth in life is that we sometimes learn to adore the monster in the room, just hoping the monster will decide not to eat us. Dante promises that anyone who disrespects her will just cease to exist, saying it as casually as checking the morning weather. He grabs her waist, pulling her against his chest in a terrifying flex of total ownership. He commands her to never look down again, claiming his shadow makes her untouchable. The scene cuts to the harsh lights of a massive, abandoned warehouse where dozens of hardened mobsters circle a giant table. The second Dante walks through those heavy iron doors, gripping her hand like a vice, the entire room goes dead silent. Let us get this straight. He is not holding her hand out of sweet romance. He is parading his newest prize. Because honestly, a king's ultimate power means absolutely nothing if he does not have an audience terrified enough to watch him use it. Bro, you have to look at Ara right now. Standing in the middle of this literal court of wolves, we are watching her old self get completely deleted. Her whole life, she was an NPC fading into the background. But here, surrounded by mob assassins, she actually lifts her chin. She thinks this insane defiance makes her a boss. In reality, she is just a drowning woman hugging the exact shark that wants to eat her. Dante tightens his grip, dropping absolute ice in the room, promising to zero any guy who even breathes in her direction. One soldier steps out of line, and Dante crushes his soul with one glare. The life lesson here is wild but true. Real strength means leveling up on your own. You never get true power by hiding behind the mafia boss who holds your leash. The tension in this room is suffocating, guys. Dante locks his jaw and claims Ara as his own, a possessive flex that slams down like an iron gate. Today, you and I are going to unpack this massive drama unfolding in the shadows. Elena leans in, asking if Ara even gets the endless loop of mafia violence she is signing up for. Ara is literally shaking, but stares straight into the ice-cold eyes of her captor. She keeps her voice dead steady and says she chooses this cage. Elena smiles, completely misreading Ara's frantic survival mode as some epic brave moment. It is a crazy scene that hits us with a harsh truth. We totally mistake our desperate need to survive for free will, and end up falling head over heels for the very toxic cages we can never break out of. The lighting flips, casting insane shadows across Dante's face as he totally flexes his ultimate boss status. He introduces his syndicate, and the camera zooms in on Ara's eyes. Going wide, plot twist. Standing right there is the exact scumbag who assaulted her. All the color straight up vanishes from her face. Her brain violently hits the mute button on reality just to cope. The mobsters stare her down, silently branding her as the Don's personal property. She should be suffocating under that ownership. Instead, her mind twists the terror into a warped shield, thinking this loss of freedom is her only cheat code to stay alive. The lesson here is wild. Strip away someone's safety, and they will blindly run to find comfort in the exact same hands that stole it. The sheer size of this underground empire drops on her like a literal ton of bricks. With a casual flick of his wrist, Dante lets her sit, managing her exhaustion like she is just another number on his mafia spreadsheet. The camera pans to his face, and that fake warmth he had, completely deleted. Now it is just the terrifying mob boss, ready to crush any rebellion. But instead of running, Ara gets pulled deeper into this trauma bond. She finds a twisted flex in being chosen by the apex predator everyone else is terrified of. Elena stays behind, warning Ara not to let this mafia darkness rot her soul. But the vendetta train has already left the station. Hard truth time. You cannot hang around a radioactive environment without slowly losing the best parts of who you are. Elena leans in and drops this wild lie, whispering that Dante is actually a good guy trapped in a dark business. Bro, That is the ultimate excuse enablers use for absolute monsters. When Dante walks back in, Ara totally folds, confessing how terrified she is. His move is so calculated. He strokes her hair, rewarding her submission and locking her into his shadow. Then the scene hard cuts to a fancy restaurant where the owner treats Dante like royalty, creating this bizarre illusion of a normal lunch date. Ara eats it up, pretending the guy across from her does not have a literal body count. But the sinister vibe is screaming in the background. Remember this lesson, guys. A quiet moment in a toxic setup does not mean you are safe. It just means the monster is taking a nap. Let us break this down frame by frame together, all right? The camera pushes in as Ara actually asks about the Don getting taken out, Dante's father. Dante does not even flinch. Zero grief in his eyes, just the cold calculus of the mafia empire he took over. He drops a massive plot twist, admitting his early rookie mistakes almost burned the whole syndicate down. It is a rare glitch in his matrix that he instantly covers up with pure mob arrogance. When she asks about regrets, his chilling, dead-eyed silence fills the room. Ara is so deep in the trauma source that she scrambles to defend his brutal methods, framing his absolute cruelty as simple survival. The sad lesson here: we will literally rewrite a villain's morality just to survive standing next to them. The sun hits the street as they take a casual walk through a normal neighborhood. To any random person, it looks like a romance movie. But boom, the camera pulls back to show Marco tailing them like the Grim Reaper. Dante is literally an apex predator chilling in plain sight. He whispers to Varsa that this invisibility is their armor. This is where her mind goes totally off the rails. After a lifetime of getting stomped on, she finds a sick comfort in his terrifying mob power. Walking next to the most dangerous in the city makes her feel bulletproof. It is a wild look at trauma. People will twist their minds into knots just to feel protected. But, spoiler alert, you are never truly safe if your fortress is built by the exact monster you should be running from. The heavy doors slam shut as the Don leaves, giving Ara a tiny slice of peace. She hits the piano keys, trying to remember the normal girl she was before this mafia chaos. But that vibe gets wrecked the absolute second he walks back in. He crashes her solo session, putting his hands on the keys and injecting his dark energy into her safe space. Stick with me, guys, because this is the real plot twist. This is not some cute, romantic duet. A toxic boss cannot stand seeing his victim happy if he is not controlling it. They share a laugh over a missed note, and her cage totally fades into the music. Here is the ultimate life lesson. Real love means giving someone room to breathe, not aggressively taking over every single inch of their personal world. Watch closely, guys, because this fake domestic peace is about to get nuked. The phone rings, hitting the room like a literal sniper shot. Dante goes from fake sweetheart to absolute mob terminator in half a second. A rival gang just torched one of his warehouses, and Ara hits maximum panic. She asks what his play is, but you can already read the absolute vendetta carved into his face. Violence is the only language this guy speaks. He orders Marco to lock her up. As he turns around, she sees pure, empty darkness in his eyes. Instead of running, her trauma bond kicks in. She actually starts crying and begging the mafia boss to come back to her. The life lesson? We get so messed up that we desperately look for safety in the exact roaring fires that are guaranteed to burn us to ash. Bro, see how he totally weaponizes her attachment here. His face softens, whispering a dramatic promise to return. It is a masterclass in locking down her loyalty before going full hitman on his rivals. He ditches her in the dark with Marco. To the outside world, Marco is security. But in this twisted setup, he is straight up the warden. Left in the dead silence, Ara starts losing her mind. Marco casually drops the bomb that Dante is the real monster, sending her brain into a glitch. She is terrified of the Don, yet convinced she cannot survive without him. Every car, headlight flashing on the wall, feels like a hit squad pulling up. When the lock clicks at 3 in the morning, it hits us with a crazy lesson. Total isolation will make you literally crave the poison ending your life. Let us unpack this massive plot twist together, guys. Ara sprints us across the room, running purely on raw panic. Dante steps into the light and his shirt is absolutely soaked in blood. Anyone with a normal brain would bolt, but Ara runs up and checks his body for bullet holes. His face is like a brick wall. With zero emotion, he drops the bomb that he just wiped out an entire rival mafia family. 12 guys, straight to the graveyard. Then he looks right at her and weaponizes her guilt, claiming he pulled off this massacre just to keep her safe. A rational person runs away, but her trauma bond has completely deleted her moral compass. Instead of screaming, she hugs the hitman. The lesson here is brutal. When you lose your core identity, you will gladly set up camp inside the darkest hearts. When we rewind this mafia drama, we are looking for the exact second her brain breaks permanently. For Ara, it starts with a shaky breath and a whispered apology. She is literally crying into his blood-soaked shirt, telling him she is sorry. Bro, it is the classic hostage move, trying to cool down a ticking time bomb. Her words just hang in the dark room, a desperate play to soothe the absolute villain energy radiating off this guy. She is begging for forgiveness over a 12-man body count she had nothing to do with, laying down the final cement on her trauma bond. She actually thinks taking on his sins will somehow nerf his inner demon. We have to learn from this epic disaster. You can never fix a toxic person by taking the blame for the massive chaos they choose to cause. Listen up, guys. Look at the sheer arrogance on Dante right here. The camera zooms in on him, tilting his head like he is some untouchable underworld god. He whispers, "Do not be," and completely deletes her emotional freedom in 3 seconds flat. He tells her this violence was always going to happen, and she was just his convenient excuse to let the beast out. That is some next-level manipulation. He acts like his psycho energy is a force of nature, making sure Ara knows the predator was always awake. The scene cuts to black with her looking totally devoted, which is just wild to witness. The absolute worst monsters do not just break you down, they gaslight you into thinking you asked for it. Seriously, if someone ever tries to shrink your worth to justify their own toxic mess, run for the hills. Today, you and I are going to unpack this terrible moment together, because it is wild. The camera gets up close, and we see this apex predator totally faking a fatal wound. Dante slumps his shoulders like he is defeated and buries his face in Ara's hair. He drops this super hollow whisper, saying he needs a shower. This guy is literally weaponizing his own breakdown. By playing the pathetic broken man, he completely hacks her empathy and shuts down her survival instincts. She just swallows hard and murmurs, "Okay." She is so traumatized that she stops seeing a violent monster dripping with the aftermath of a hit and only sees a sad guy who needs a hug. It is a massive trap. The tragic lesson here is that the most dangerous cages in life are the ones we willingly unlock for the broken people we feel sorry for. Let us step into this room together, and let me tell you, the vibe is absolutely suffocating. You can practically smell the copper from the fresh blood. As Dante pulls back, Ara finally sees the grim reality. His shirt is completely ruined with wet crimson. sticking to his massive hands like a terrifying second skin. This is the messy aftermath of a straight-up mob hit. Any rational person would be screaming their lungs out and bolting for the nearest exit. But the camera just stays on Ara, and she is totally frozen in place. Her brain literally blue screens and shuts down the horror, wrapping her fragile mind in pure shock just to cope. It is a brutal reality check for all of us. When your heart simply cannot handle the nightmare standing right in your face, your mind will build a literal fortress of ice just to survive the darkness. "Join me," he whispers. And it sounds like a sweet plea, but do not be fooled, guys. It is a straight-up dark command. Pay super close attention to how this shot is framed, because there is zero romance happening here. A messed-up mobster like Dante refuses to be alone with the screaming ghosts of the guys he just took out. He desperately needs a pure anchor to keep himself from drowning in the abyss. So he drags Ara into the suffocating steam and literally forces her to scrub the guilt right off his skin. Now her bare hands are permanently carrying the ugly stain of his crimes. We are watching a super toxic trauma bond getting locked in against her will. The life lesson here hits hard, but it is true. When you choose to help a toxic person wash away their terrible mistakes, you are always going to end up wearing all of their heavy guilt as your own. They are standing under this punishing, scalding water, completely trapped in the most suffocating silence ever. The camera pans down to the shower drain, showing the hot water spiraling down in thick ribbons of dark red before it slowly turns clear. Ara is literally shaking, her hands moving like a robot over his back as she scrubs away the messy evidence of his brutality. Meanwhile, Dante just stands there like a statue, with his eyes closed, soaking up her touch like some fallen mafia king demanding total loyalty. It is a devastating picture of pure psychological submission. She is actively cleaning away his horror, basically giving his madness a free pass. Always keep this lesson in mind, folks. The second you start cleaning up the terrible wreckage of someone else's cruelty, you are quietly accepting it as a permanent part of your own life. Once the mess of that hit is finally gone, a completely fake illusion of safety creeps back into the bathroom. The harsh light throws crazy shadows all over the dripping tiles. Dante steps out without a word, leaving poor Ara shivering cold under the fading heat. Her eyes are perfectly hollow, staring blankly at the porcelain, while her brain fights to unsee the nightmare she just touched. The physical blood might be down the drain, but that invisible, psychological stain is now crushing her shoulders. She dries off in dead silence, floating round like a trapped ghost in a mafia mansion she can never leave. This points to a tragic truth we often learn way too late. You can easily scrub away the physical evidence of a horrible night, but the heavy emotional trauma will remain there to permanently stain your soul forever. Stick with me here, because this is the exact moment steel trap violently snaps shut. Dante sneaks behind her back and forges her admission into a super elite college. When she rightfully gets mad, the dude instantly drops to one knee. Look at how the lighting suddenly gets all soft and cinematic. He looks up from this calculated, fake, submissive angle, giving a speech about wanting to restore her broken dreams. He promises to pay the crazy tuition and lock down her future. Ara is totally overwhelmed, and you watch her anger melt into this tragic puddle of pure gratitude. She honestly thinks she just won her ultimate freedom, completely blind to the cold iron bars locking her in. Here is the harsh reality check for today. Absolute control almost always wears the beautiful, sparkling mask of romantic generosity. Check out how her deepest ambitions are totally weaponized against her. She is starving for independence, and this poisoned bait is way too sweet to pass up. The second she whispers her surrender, you see this evil victorious smirk pull at Dante's lips. He casually drops the bomb that she will be staying with him for a very long time. Tragically, she mistakes this terrifying declaration of ownership for some passionate vow of true love. Then the edit brutally cuts between her two fractured realities. By day, she sits in sunlit lecture halls, debating classical art, but by night, she crawls into the heavy sheets of a literal crime boss who orders mob hits with the flick of a wrist. The lesson is painfully obvious, guys. Trying to juggle a fractured double life is inevitably going to split your fragile soul right down the middle. The wide shot pulls back to show Ara chilling at a busy campus cafe. She is surrounded by chatter, but man, she has never looked more isolated. Her classmates are sitting in the sun, whining about trust funds and weekend parties. Ara pastes on a totally fake smile, nodding along while desperately hiding the ticking bomb in her chest. Then, a girl leans in and jokingly asks if Ara is secretly in witness protection. You can see the blood instantly drain right out of Ara's face. She forces out a hollow, engineered laugh to cover her panic, quickly shifting the topic back to her old diner days to throw them off the scent. She is actively burying her real personality to protect the mafia boss keeping her captive. Always remember this truth. Guarding a highly toxic secret will inevitably demand the slow sacrifice of your true identity. Ara wanders back home through the fading light, painfully aware that the clueless college kids passing by could never fathom the brutal underworld Dante runs. When she steps into his dimly lit penthouse, the true tragedy of her situation hits max levels. She is bone-tired from wearing a fake mask all day, so she collapses right into the arms of the exact dude ruining her life. Dante slowly strokes her hair, his voice dropping into a deep mafia rumble as he strictly forbids her from ever talking. He is a master manipulator, spinning her total isolation into this breathtaking dark romance, feeding her elegant lies about his violent empire, just to keep her calm. You and I need to spot the massive red flag right here. Seeking comfort from the literal person causing your pain is a fast track to losing yourself completely in the dark. The camera shifts hard here, dunking us straight into the freezing reality of his mind games. Dante paces the floor like a caged predator, his movements sharp, actively testing the limits of her blind loyalty. He casually mentions that his mafia associates think she is way too weak for this life. When Ara gets defensive, acting like she knows what she signed up for, Dante brutally shatters that fantasy. He steps uncomfortably close, verbally forcing her to imagine the freezing steel of a loaded gun pressed right against her temple. He demands her exact game plan for when his enemies inevitably kick down her door. The color drops from her face as that fake romantic fog totally evaporates, leaving behind pure paralyzing terror. The life lesson is crystal clear. Ignoring early relationship red flags only guarantees you will eventually face a deadly storm without any shelter. Stick with me here, because this is where the tragedy gets locked in stone. Dante steps back and literally offers her an open door to walk away. But guys, it is a totally rigged game. He already knows he has the psychological padlock perfectly secured around her brain. Ara does not run. Instead, she steps closer. Her shaking hands reach up to grab his face, passionately swearing she will never leave his side. He pulls her into a desperate kiss, hiding his own terrified obsession with keeping her submissive. As the city freezes over, Her internal ruin starts bleeding into her college projects. She builds this wild art exhibit that mashes classical martyrs against modern mob cruelty. It is literally a stunning, silent scream for help. This points to a massive truth. Your mind will always find a creative way to leak out the deep trauma you refuse to speak about aloud. Let us look at this, guys. The cozy vibe of the studio is totally gone, replaced by pure nightmare fuel. Ara is buried under canvases, running on zero sleep, stale coffee, and unfiltered panic. Then Dante, our favorite mob boss, casually leans in the doorway. He watches her mental breakdown with twisted fascination before snatching the brush from her hand like a disappointed dad. But the damage is done. Ara stares at him with hollow eyes, completely convinced she has to work herself to death just to pay back the dirty money he forced on her. She is literally trading her sanity for his toxic approval. It is wild. Look, here is a simple lesson. Burning yourself out just to prove your worth to a manipulative partner will absolutely destroy every beautiful thing you have inside you. The phone buzzing shatters the afternoon. One text from Dante, and the fake romance drops dead. Suddenly, he is barking orders like a cornered mafia don. He weaponizes her panic to get absolute obedience. His muscle rolls up, and Ara dives into the black sedan. You hear that heavy metallic thud of the locks. That is her fate sealing shut. As the car tears through the city, she does not cry over her lost freedom or scream at the madness. Instead, she looks in the rearview mirror and calmly asks if Dante's rival is back to put them in the ground. Her entire moral compass has shrunk to just keeping her mob boss breathing. It leaves us with a brutal life lesson. Letting constant chaos into your world will eventually completely destroy your internal radar for right and wrong. Stick with me, because you and I are watching the absolute end of the line. Ara gets dragged into a windowless room, totally cut off from the world. Dante is lurking in the shadows like a villain. He pulls her into a crushing hug that knocks the wind out of her, inspecting her face like she is his most expensive sports car. He whispers that dodging bullets is just his normal Tuesday. Twisting the terror to prove his violent mob lifestyle is totally justified. Ara just stands there, her hands shaking so hard she cannot even hide it. Then the heavy door bolts shut, and the lights go out. Pure nightmare fuel. The real takeaway here is a very simple life lesson. Trading your personal freedom for a toxic promise of protection will always leave you completely defenseless in the dark. The camera holds on the absolute wreckage of her soul. Ara is gasping for air, frantically whispering how terrified she is of losing him. It is textbook psychological surrender, guys. Her whole universe has shrunk down to this mafia boss. Dante just stands in the shadows, totally unable to handle the fact that he messed up. Look at that cold lighting on his jaw. You will not see an ounce of regret in his eyes, just a brutal vow to entirely wipe out the rival who made him look weak. His hollow voice sends a massive shiver down her spine, which she tragically mistakes for deep romantic devotion. It is pure insanity. Here is a crucial life lesson for everyone. We often make the fatal mistake of confusing the fire that warms us with the fire that will eventually burn our entire house to the ground. Notice how perfectly the shot frames her total isolation. Dante leaves at dawn to get his bloody revenge, barking at Ara to stay hidden. He is literally controlling her breathing while he turns the city streets into a war zone. Hour by hour, she just paces the floor. Her panic is not about escaping. It is about the safe return of the monster who locked her up. When Dante finally stumbles in at 3 a.m, his arm is out of the socket and he is drenched in blood. But his mob boss ego refuses to break. He rejects the hospital, choosing underground secrecy over his own body. By forcing Ara drop down and play nurse, he physically binds her to his survival. Here is your harsh life lesson. We almost always end up bleeding the most for the exact people who happily hand us the blade. The camera captures the insane weight of her compliance. Any normal person would sprint for the nearest exit, but Ara just swallows her instinct to run, totally paralyzed by his heavy stare. As she bandages his massive stab wounds, her creepy calmness shows her brain is basically breaking. Dante clinically lists off the people he massacred tonight. He talks about executing his rival and all the witnesses with absolutely zero emotion. When she nervously asks if the gang wars will ever end, his answer freezes the room. He whispers that there is always another enemy out there. In his twisted head, this endless mafia war is the perfect excuse to control her life. It brings us to a painful life lesson. Unchecked fear will always end up building the tallest, most inescapable prisons in our own minds. Listen to this pivot, because we are diving straight into absolute darkness. Dante openly brags about the brutal violence of his criminal empire, flat out saying he will never change. Ara sees the massive red flags. She is literally wiping sweat off a mob boss. She knows she needs to bolt. But that psychological conditioning runs so deep, it chokes out her survival instincts. She actually kisses the predator on the forehead and swears her total loyalty. When a shady underground doctor shows up to fix his torn shoulder, the cold vibe makes this nightmare feel like an everyday thing. She gently tucks the medicated crime lord into bed, fully accepting her role as his accomplice. Here is a massive life lesson. Our most destructive choices almost always wear the disguised mask of true love. The camera zooms in to show just how sick her affection has gotten. Ara sits quietly by the bed, literally tracing the physical scars of his gang wars. She looks at the dark bruises and ugly stitches, actively spinning this horrific violence into some dark, romantic fantasy. She has totally convinced herself that his toxic mafia cage is actually a secure fortress of love. This is the moment of her ultimate psychological defeat. When Dante wakes up, he pulls a fake guilt trip, softly whispering that she should run away. It is a straight-up cruel test of her loyalty, and Ara fails it immediately, pressing her hand over his cold lips. She has accepted his bloody world. Here is the life lesson. You completely lose your own identity the exact second you start falling in love with your own chains. In this agonizing close-up, Ara literally tortures her last bridge to sanity. She whispers that she gets exactly who he is, completely forgiving the fact that he is a monster. For a power-hungry mob boss, this is the jackpot. He is getting worshipped for being a ruthless killer. Dante grabs her face hard, demanding he gets to own her forever, pitching a life sentence as a grand romantic promise. They swap breathless confessions, confusing shared trauma for actual intimacy. They stay locked in this bunker for 3 straight days, dodging the sun. When they finally step out, they look like shell-shocked soldiers coming back from a massive war zone. It leaves us with a chilling life lesson. The absolute most dangerous lies in the world are always the ones we choose to build together in the dark. You and I need to talk about how this trauma leaks into the real world. Ara projects her fractured mind straight onto the canvas. She paints a crazy mix of violence and beauty, turning her hostage situation into fine art. Her mentors praise the dark painting as a masterpiece, completely blind to the fact they are clapping for a girl trapped by the mafia. When a friend asks what inspired it, Ara goes ice cold, vaguely blaming it on life. Then the energy suddenly shifts. Dante strolls in flanked by armed muscle, walking through her normal life like an apex predator. It is a massive flex of power, hiding behind the mask of a supportive boyfriend. Let this be a profound life lesson. We constantly hang our deepest, most painful wounds in plain sight for absolutely everyone around us to miss. Dante stands before her masterpiece, comparing her beautiful art to his bloody mafia hits. By dragging her talent down to his level, he makes sure his validation is the only thing she craves. Soon, their lives fall to an insane loop of chaotic drama. They scream about his criminal empire, but he uses sudden flashes of charm to keep her locked in. His paranoid mob life is just her normal Tuesday now. Then, he brings her back to the exact restaurant where he first essentially kidnapped her. Talk about a massive power move to start his endgame. Under the dim lights, he slides a small velvet box across the table, and Ara just freezes. Here is a terrifying life lesson for everyone. Total psychological captivity often wears a clever disguise and ends up feeling exactly like true destiny. Watch this final moment with me, because this is the knockout blow to her sanity. Dante admits he is a monster she should run from, but then demands she submits forever. He weaponizes his sickness, spinning his mob obsession into a tragic romance. Ara looks at the massive diamond ring, but does not see a handcuff. She sees a shiny medal for surviving his madness, eagerly saying yes. As he slides the metal onto her finger, he whispers he does not to deserve her. This is a classic manipulator trick, forcing the victim to comfort the villain. When his mafia captains applaud Ara for being braver than a soldier, it normalizes her mental doom. Here is the final life lesson. Even the most stunning, expensive cages in the world are built for one reason: to permanently break your wings. Bro, listen to this. Jenna drops into the story as the ultimate reality check, literally begging Ara to wake up. She is pointing out the massive red flags of tying the knot with a literal mafia boss. But watch Ara completely lose the plot. She goes into full defense mode, trying to spin it like 6 chaotic months, with a hitman somehow beat a safe life. She clings to those rare moments where Dante acts human, tricking herself into believing she has free will. But Dante has her in a psychological chokehold, disguising his absolute dominance as fierce protection. Even Jenna just throws her hands up and walks away. The lesson here is pretty heavy. Sometimes our desperate need to feel loved completely blinds us to the very thing that is about to destroy us. Get a load of this wedding scene. Dante's sister pulls Ara aside, and she is honestly the last sane person in this entire family. She reads her brother like a book and offers Ara a clean getaway car right then and there. She knows his obsessive affection is just pure terror wearing a tuxedo. But what does Ara do? She slams the escape door shut and chooses the fire. We are literally watching a hostage fight to defend her own cage. The sister finally steps back, dropping a hardcore threat on Dante, just in case. Cut to them saying "I do" in an isolated garden, surrounded by goons holding rifles. This is not a romance. This is a villain locking down his prize. Remember this simple truth. The darkest, most dangerous prisons in life are always locked from the inside. You and I really need to unpack these wild vows. Ara is up there, talking about choosing love over fear, totally ignoring the absolute chaos around her. Meanwhile, Dante promises to be her ultimate protector, leaning hard into his twisted god complex. Later on, he is staring out at the city he literally rules, confessing that he is scared. But do not get it twisted. A mob boss does not fear losing a soulmate. He fears control over his favorite shiny toy. Those wedding bands are not about sweet devotion. They are straight up tracking collars. The life lesson here cuts deep. A hardcore predator might throw around the word love, but to them, a ring is never an actual promise. It is just a very heavy, very expensive chain meant to keep you exactly where they want you. The visual setup here is absolute cinema. Look at how the shadows practically eat Ara alive while she sits waiting for the next shootout. Her shoulders are super tense, while Dante chills in this warm light like he is invincible. Next thing you know, he buys her a private art studio. It seems like a massive romantic flex, but it is calculated. He feeds her crumbs of independence to guarantee she stays loyal. Then he sits at his grand piano, playing classical music to mask his criminal empire, whispering about going totally legit. Do not buy the hype for a single second. The lesson here is brutal but true. A cornered monster never actually seeks real redemption. They just changed their camouflage so they can keep hunting right in front of your face. Fast forward a bit, and the camera gets right up in Dante's face. You can see the gray in his hair now. The mob boss lifestyle is catching up, and he knows a rival hitman will clip him eventually. So, he spins an exit strategy into a romantic gesture, asking Ara if she wants a normal life. Over 2 years, he liquidates his underworld empire and buys into real estate. He acts like the violent Dante is dead and gone, but the director makes it super obvious what is really happening. He did not change. He just traded bloody alleyways for ruthless corporate boardrooms. Ara completely falls for it, thinking his tactical retreat is actual emotional healing. The life lesson here is simple. A predator wrapped in a custom-tailored suit is still a creature born to hunt. Stick with me, because this art show scene is pure madness. Ara opens a massive gallery exhibit, putting all her trauma on public display. Meanwhile, Dante has totally scrubbed his bloody reputation, hiding his mob money behind shiny corporate logos. When the gallery clears out, watch how his body language shifts. He steps way too close, totally stealing her spotlight, and whispers that he personally destroyed everyone who stood in her way. And bro, she actually looks up with heart eyes and says thank you. It is honestly sickening. The agonizing life lesson here is impossible to miss. When you owe your biggest success to a deeply dangerous person, you have not found freedom at all. You have just traded a rusty iron cage for a shiny golden one. It is honestly wild to watch them stand among these paintings of destruction, straight up asking each other if they are happy. Both whisper yes without skipping a beat. They have completely romanticized all the mob shootouts, treating their toxic history like some beautiful love story. Ara stares at his hands, the exact same hands that ordered countless hits, and thinks it is cute that they just play the piano now. She is deep in this crazy delusion, thinking her save complex actually cured a mafia boss. She genuinely believes his new corporate gig proves his loyalty. But the brutal life lesson hitting us right in the face is so clear. You can never love the poison out of a venomous snake. A predator just learns to hunt in a softer place so his prize stays asleep in his arms. You and I have to unpack this massive time jump together. 5 years later, the camera catches them chilling in a giant mansion built entirely on lies. Ara's vibe proves she has fully accepted her role as the fragile girl saved by a reformed monster. Out on their sunlit porch, Dante leans in and asks if she regrets anything, subtly pulling her strings just to make sure he still owns her mind. She looks out at the view, calling their survival cosmic luck, totally blind to the extreme psychological trauma tying them together. They really think their toxic pieces fit together perfectly. But the director drops a super sober life lesson right here. Sometimes, the quiet, boring piece we desperately call a cure is really just the silent symptom of a completely fatal disease. And just like that, the screen goes dark, leaving us with the ultimate tragedy. To think this whole insane ride started over a dropped glass in a restaurant, and now it morphed into this suffocating lifestyle. Look at how they grip each other against the skyline, like their lives depend on it. They actually have the nerve to call this psychological sickness true love. They really tricked themselves into believing two shattered people could magically fix each other just by sharing their dark pasts. With the whole city buzzing below them, Dante locks her into this heavy, completely inescapable hug. It leaves us staring at one final, haunting life lesson. The human heart is so desperate for connection that it will gladly paint the cold iron bars of its own prison and call it a beautiful victory.